Did I just talk on my own? I muted my mic, is it? Never mind, I'll repeat. Make sure to turn on your camera. It's a requirement. Alright. So tadi saya cakap seorang-seorang lah tadi tu. Sorry. Okay, so I represent balik. Supposedly we have missed out a subchapter because our LIC, Madam Mazratul, had forgotten that there's supposed to be a subchapter here in chapter 2 and we have missed out. Even in perancangan kuliah study schedule by her, haven't shown anything here. Supposedly there's a 2 subchapter here. If you might have a chance to look at the, what you call that, course outline by Sims, the Sims UiTM basically. The subject actually has been included to have another 2 chapters, which the one energy pricing supposedly is in chapter 2, but me and Cik Azri has mistakenly thought it was in chapter 1. So never mind, it's still applicable. It's just that the arrangement might be a little bit ni lah, bersepah sikit. Oh, I'm sharing here. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm sharing. I forgot. Okay, so never mind, but chapter 2, energy auditing and energy pricing, understanding energy pricing, is not to say unrelevant. It is relevant, but it's more on a practical hands-on punya understanding lah. So even though we had misallocate the subchapters, but it's still applicable in the sense that it is more a hands-on view that could help you in your mini project later on. Okay, so let me share with you for today's. So today, energy audit supposedly in chapter 2 again, but considering, sorry, Google Chrome is not responding. I'm waiting for it to share the screen. Give it a second. I guess sharing stopping. It's oh, my Google Chrome hang. Just stay here for a bit. Let me re-log in, I guess, before we proceed. Let me close this and then rejoin the Google Meet. Hold on, yeah. I mute lagi. Sorry, yeah. I'll turn off my camera so that it would be a little bit easy on my machine. So, but you can still see my slide presentation, which also included my face here. So we'll continue with our slide, which is actually falls under chapter 2 again, but I had just been told yesterday that this is supposed to be in the course outline. So I guess our LIC had missed this out. So that's why the slide here is from Shalam, but we'll just use it. And this falls under chapter 2, but as you guys know, we have already proceeded to chapter 3 actually. But I guess although it's relevant, but the arrangement doesn't affect your uh, lecture progresses. It's more on the hands-on knowledge. So energy audit ni is more on you once you have, if you recall last week, after you have done your energy management program, typically you need to audit lah. So this is how energy audit would practically being done. So first, this is where it is in the whole roadmap to get star AMAS star recognition. So if you have energy audit here, typically you'll get 3 star from AMAS, AEMAS, which is Asian Energy Management Accreditation Scheme. So this is here. So as you can see here, it is under implementation, not at the start of the project, not during the implementation of the start of proposal, but more on after you have set up energy management program lah in the organization. Okay, can I just press down? Yeah, all right. So in auditing, energy audit, typically one of the key parameters that you are going to measure is the BEI, which is benchmarking in building. So basically, what you need to do for BEI is just this formula: energy consumed divided over area of the energy being used. So if let's say you have a room and you want to measure what is the BEI or energy consumption parameters that you want to measure, so you have to measure only on that room only, which is maybe, for example, the cooling of that room. So measure the area per square feet or meter squared, and then get the bills. Preferably, if you have a data logger, you have to tap it on that particular room energy consumption. So once you got the data specific for that room, then you divide with the area for that room. So in the what it means by BEI is a tool to monitor building energy performance, not the building specifically. You can narrow it down to a room, just the room, but you can also use it for the whole building or maybe specific area. It's up to you. You define this yourself. Just that you have the data logger, and by indicating the intensity of energy being used per meter square, or this can be meter square, this can be as normally when you're measuring area of a space, typically you will be using meter square foot, or maybe as SQF. Typically, for those who might have some interest in starting their real estate investment journey. So you might need to be familiar with square foot area or whatnot. So typically it's can be square foot, but in this case we'll be using more on meter square. So, but the gist of it is that you're trying to measure the total electrical energy being consumed for that area. So that's the what you call that, the the basic understanding of what BEI is. So therefore, it will be typically in annual terms. Can I highlight this? Uh, Hold on here. I should be able to highlight this. Annual, in terms of annual. So typically you'll have an annual kWh, kilowatt hour per year. It can be kilowatt also. And also the net floor area, which is in this case in meter squared. But if you're using foot, then foot. Uh, I haven't had. Typically, people will say square foot. So, what are the benefit of getting a BEI labeling? Basically, we are looking this into government buildings, but because currently in Malaysia, private institution is quite hard for them to fork out the capital to just getting the label. But we focus more on government building because they have the fund from the government, given the what do you call it, the Malaysia, the one that we have discussed a few chapters back, chapter 1, I think, the benefit of pursuing energy management. Typically, government building have their funding lah being allocated by the government to kickstart the energy management program. So that's why we are focusing more on government building. Basically, government wants, because of due to Najib punya commitment, that the one that we have discussed in chapter 1. So Malaysian government start with Malaysian government building first. So because that is under their control. So during the start of the energy management program, typically what you want the government want to see is where government is in energy management right now. So that's why they need to ascertain the energy performance of the government building first, and then to once they have kickstart once they have known where their level is at right now, because remember we've done the energy management metrics, so EM, and then once they know where they are right now, then they can accelerate the effort and then provide and disseminate information so that they know that we are currently a government themselves are pursuing energy management program, so they need to participate. This is a concerted effort, not just one government subdivision trying to gain popularity or not. No, this is a concerted effort by the government body. And then healthy competition. Sorry, am I using? Okay, sorry, I'm setting up my mic audio. Okay, and then create healthy competition among building owners to improve energy use, because there's no progress like a competition. That's why Americans like to say that they are what you call that, free market and free market, healthy competition. So competition comes from one to one up each other lah. So that's supposedly being the competition the government want to pursue in energy management. And then basic, I'm not sure this is the new one, but supposedly this is by Dr. Nabil. Just to let you know, Dr. Nabil is a Faculty of Electrical Engineering punya lecturer, and he is memang UiTM or maybe FKE, just FKE, delegate this task of energy management ni memang untuk dia lah. Basically, he would be the contact person in Shah Alam that actively engage company luar to advise them on energy management. So this info might be the latest one as updated by him, but I'm unable to confirm unless I'm able to contact him personally. But I think this is recent target, which is 45% by 2030. If you recall chapter 1, Najib, uh, Datuk Seri Najib mentioned in the conference is on 2020, if I'm not mistaken, by 40%. So in 2030, which is in another 9 years, they just want to get an additional 5%. So I would think this is achievable. So I would think this is the latest one punya target lah, set by the government. So how does it look? So this is the stickers or maybe the labeling that you get once you able to comply with the targeted BEI here. So the more star, again, the more efficient that building. So 1 star being highly inefficient, 5 star being most efficient. Okay, so for BEI, there's no unit except for, the BEI is actually, the unit is kilowatt hours per meter squared per year. So once you cut the area and the energy consumption, it would be in the range of 100 above lah. So 5 star being less than or equal to 100 kilowatt hour meter squared per year, and 1 star being if you consume more than 250. So this is how it looks. This is the stars. This is the total kilowatt hour per year being used, and then the building name lah, hospital ke apa ke. So kat sini lah nampak. So this is how it looks for BEI, which is the labeling that you'll get if you're building. Not to say the machine. This is specifically for building. If once the audit team comes over and measure your building's electrical consumption, so you'll be able to get this task for your organization. Okay, so this is an steel industries. I'm not sure when this is, but I would think this is to reflect on the current of uh, energy being used in steel industries, because steel industries are typically the industries that use the most amount of energy in a country. So because they need to melt the steel, so all the furnace, in order for you to melt the steel, you have to subject the metal under this furnace. So in order for the furnace to work, you can't you can't turn it on at 8 o'clock just right after you come into the office, because it would take some time for it to, I think around, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, duration for it to reach the temperature to melt the steel, it would take maybe 1 or 2 hours. So if you work at 8 and then go back at 6 and suddenly you turn off your machine at 6 and only turn it on at 8, chances are the temperature, you will waste a lot of time lah, turning on and turning off the machine. So typically what steel industry would do is they would just leave the furnace on to a certain level, not to this, maybe if there are nobody working, so they'll just maybe reduce it to, instead of 1,000 degrees Celsius, maybe reduce it to 800 or 500 degrees Celsius, depending, because they have to do some calculation. So as you can see here, the most energy being used is in Australia, 0.79, and sorry, Russia 0.80, maybe because they are providing tons of development over there. But I actually expecting China, because they are the world manufacturer. But apparently, just so you know, China actually, once the energy management program has been introduced to the world, China is heavily participating in all the program. So that's why I'm quite impressed that China has been able to reduce their oil consumption and crude iron production to 0.76. I was expecting there should be more lah, because again, they are the manufacturer of the world, and I guess they have started to implement the energy management program in their factories. So they are able to produce more, although using a lesser amount of fuel or energy consumption for their process lah. But for US, UK, Canada, I would say they haven't changed much. Not the reason why they are low, not because they are efficient. No, actually because in the world today, US, Canada, and UK are losing quite heavily to China in terms of manufacturing. So in the steel industry, this is the benchmark that after auditing has been done. So this is where they are right now. Malaysia, we aren't actually as, we have steel industries, but not so much that we can put side by side with this whole country over here. Because as you can see, US, UK, Canada, Germany, Japan, Australia, Korea, China, India, and Russia, they are the most, I would say, the higher end lah, steel industries punya manufacturer or producer or whatever steel industries that categorize here lah. Okay, so these are the tools for us to monitor our energy that is available from Suruhanjaya Tenaga. I don't have the password, I don't have the access, but typically, if you want to get the forms, the guideline and whatever, you can get it via Energy Management Information System provided by Suruhanjaya Tenaga here lah. So I guess you have to set up, register with Suruhanjaya Tenaga for you to be able to access this website. I myself, I haven't had the chance because I'm not actively, although I have the certification of Renewable Energy Efficiency Management, REMS Manager, I don't actually practice it because, as you know, lah, Terengganu, there's not so much of industries here that I would be able to practice. In fact, the only industry I guess that would be viable is the Petronas plant in Packer, and I would think they already have one or two, because when I one or two energy manager there, because when I took up the license for energy management, there are at least five Petronas engineers over there taking also the same license as I am. So I guess Petronas are also aware of this. So for me to pursue and practice my RIMS licensing would be almost negligible lah here. But if you went over to Klang and Klang Valley and KL lah, basically Selangor KL, you would be able to set up a company typically to advise, to produce a proposal to latch on to any kind of industries over there, because there's the economic activity over there is much more higher, and of course the most developed area in Malaysia lah kan, so only logical lah. So the first rules of doing auditing, again, in any kind of engineering practices, when you're talking about energy management, of course, engineering, not so much as accounting. There is accounting, but the main tasks that when you want to do auditing for energy management is engineering section. So again, the most primary safety. Apa-apa pun buat kerja, if you want to involve machinery or any kind of engineering, safety and any kind of legislation has to be observed. And then you have to observe data confidentiality for the company, because you don't want to leak the company punya, macam KFC, awak pergi KFC, you audit dia punya equipment, tiba-tiba keluar KFC tu bagi tahu semua orang KFC pakai ni, even though sebenarnya internet, with the internet, I think you guys mostly dah tahu pun apa the how many secret recipe KFC tu, but you have to observe that company punya data confidentiality lah. And then you have to also observe system and equipment standard, meaning you basically to avoid you to operate a machinery in a wrongful or incorrect manner, because if you did incorrectly if you did incorrectly operate the machine, then takut nanti effect lah company tu punya production ke apa ke, so tak nak lah. And then observe the competency of the team. So that means if there's no judgment with the auditing team, jangan mengada-ngada pergi tap power or pergi sentuh any kind of power line punya wires lah. Or if there are nobody in your auditing team who are able to understand the wiring diagram, the data cable and whatnot, don't ever touch anything, because the purpose there are for you to do audit on energy management, not rosakkan equipment company. So of course, the first primary being, after all the other three, is to make sure the other three concern requirement mentioned previously, which is safety, data, and system standard, is to also observe competency of the team. If they are judgment, or maybe the one who set up all the connection, the engineer or whatever, then maybe you can ask their advice, or maybe they ask them to do it for you to avoid any kind of failure. And then the secondary requirements that you need to observe when doing auditing is to observe energy efficiency opportunities, material efficiency, and manpower efficiency. Okay, so we'll look into the definition. What does it mean by energy audit? Okay, ni baca lah, but a systematic inspection and analysis of energy use and consumption of audited objects to identify, and so the keyword here is to observe energy consumption, to identify energy flows, where does it go, potential opportunities if there are ability for us to save energy there, and monitoring and verification. Let's say you have been implementing energy efficiency measures. You want to confirm lah whether that measures is actually berkesan ke tak. So in order for us to do that, monitoring and verification, which we will elaborate later in chapter 4 or chapter 5, if I'm not mistaken, to improve energy performance, and then finally report them. There's no point of you doing auditing but you don't report to anybody. So yelah, buat apa audit kalau tak ada reporting kan. So again, what does it mean by auditing? First, energy consumption, to know where it's being flowed, where we can save, to confirm that what we have done is actually up to what we expect, and then if possible, improve energy performance. And finally, which is important, is to report all your findings to the appropriate person. So the objective here is to understand current energy management practices of your organization, whether it is good, whether all it is efficiently, the machine is efficiently being operated, to reduce energy consumption without compromising safety, comfort, and quality. So again, tak guna save energy tapi equipment rosak or production tak meet to the sales punya projection, tak guna lah. And then to understand energy consumption for that building, to establish baseline energy performance. So baseline energy performance ni yang kita tengok energy metrics tu. At the same time, energy metrics tu baseline juga, but more on trend line. Profile, company profile. But if I'm not mistaken, in chapter 3, we'll be focusing more on baseline to reveal where you are as an organization, electrical consumption for that year. So let's say you're just starting your energy management program. So baseline lah yang akan jadi the profile that you will refer to most of the time to prove that the measures that you have done is actually achievable. Has been achieved lah. And then to identify area of energy wastage and potential energy improvement. Ini self-defined. Okay, so there are 3 types of energy audit. First, walkthrough, preliminary audit. Secondly, detailed audit. And the third one, investment grade audit. So as the name suggests, ini basic, ini detail, ini melibatkan cost. So when you're talking about, if I can elaborate more, preliminary audit is more like getting to know the company, or maybe if you have limited budget. Detailed audit, once you have implemented the energy management program, or maybe the company has a certain amount of capital that they can invest quite significantly, quite substantial. And then investment grade is when the company is interested in the long term, meaning not just 1 or 2 years, can most probably be macam pasang solar lah, solar panel. Typically your investment will be realized in 10 or 20 years down the road. So that's investment grade audit. So what you can sorry, ada message. Okay, kelas lain, sorry. What you can deduce is that for investment grade audit is typically when you want to do or incorporate green technology in your energy management program lah. Solar panel ke, wind turbine ke, nuclear ke, that is kind of investment grade audit. As you know, that will be upwards of 100,000. So at the very least, 500,000. Then when you're talking about 500,000, typically it will fall on investment grade audit. Okay, audit ni bukan maksudnya menyusahkan. Audit ni lebih kepada to know where you are right now, to give figures, to get quantitative numbers of where you are right now. So that's the function of audit. And of course, you have to do report lah, so that everyone knows. So first, description of preliminary audit, other than what I've just told you, basically in detail, is to evaluate energy consumption in general, not in detail, just to know in rough figures only for this particular machine, how much it is being used in terms of kilowatt hours per year or whatever. Typically, it's not kilowatt hours per year. Typically, when you got energy consumption from preliminary audit, it's just in kilowatt hours only for that month, or maybe just 1 or 2 weeks punya consumption. And then energy bill analysis and determining, I'm not sure, but determining EI, BEI, SEC. EI is Energy Efficiency Index. BEI is just the one that we've discussed, building energy. What is it? BEI is building energy. Suddenly I forgot. Index, building energy. I have to get back to you. What does it mean by the exact word? But it should be building energy consumption index, katanya. But let me double check nanti. And SEC lah. BEI is the building. SEC is the specific area. I'll check back later because I forgot to check what does this short form means. Again, I'm not a practitioner. Forgive me. Maybe I'm a bit rusty on this, but again, I'm not a practitioner. Dr. Nabil is the one who practice energy management and actively approaching company to implement energy efficiency. So these terms I need to double check on you with that. But basically, it falls under energy efficiency index lah. All these BEIS, EC, and also there's one more terms called area for that particular area only. I'll maybe explain it maybe in the next class. Okay, so in the objective also for preliminary audit is just to identify potential savings in general only. So not specific. It's more on boleh contoh ke? In general, using experience and rule of thumb. So it's not more on detail. It's more on just a rough figures. So there's no systematic measurement. So even the calculation typically will be only in kilowatt hours, not so much as kilowatt hours per meter square per year. That one is more on detail audit. So that's it. For detail audit, you can use preliminary audit punya data. At the same time, you can construct your own data if the company has their own significant punya capital. And therefore, you can basically the objective here is to identify energy sources and users apportionment ni maksudnya how much appropriation of energy you can propose to the client, or maybe being supplied to the client. And then you can use detailed audit to determine what kind of equipment and system performance that could be used to replace the one that the company has right now. Maybe it's not efficient enough ke, nak pakai fridge yang instead of chiller yang maybe terrible 1 or 2 stars punya chillers, now you can propose 5-star punya chillers. Of course, significant punya investment, but it's a proposal lah. You can put it in the proposal. Performance evaluation with reference to design and standards. Make sure your design allows for energy management. So you can test and evaluate that current organization equipment, whether it is according to the standards. Investigation and measurement to identify potential savings. Again, once you go into detail, you can see the potential savings too much clearer. And analysis of saving measures using technical and economic valuation. So typically for a company, they will be looking into more on economic, but of course, that's why during auditing, it's much better if you can involve the technical team, because there's no point of having able to get economic savings, but machine rosak maybe in 1 or 2 month punya period. So tak nak lah. So kita nak make sure the technical and economic evaluation are able to meet the saving measures that we want to propose. And finally, investment grade audit. This one, if your company again has significant amount of money to invest, maybe nak incorporate solar panel ke, nak incorporate nuclear technology ke, or whatever renewable energy that they want lah. So this one has to go, of course, you have to have detail audit. Tak boleh tak ada. Mesti ada detail audit dulu. Therefore, it involves high cost and more complex system. If your company don't have that significant funding, bos tak menang nombor ekor ke apa ke, and then you have to secure some financing lah. There are several other financing that you can do rather than minta loan bank. You can actually, there's some architecture lah yang kita akan elaborate nanti. And therefore, you have to main dengan figures lah, which is ROI, IRR, and risk analysis. If I'm not mistaken, ROI and IRR should be covered in next chapter, but maybe I'm confusing that with the one that I've learned in green technology classes. So let me double check. But if I'm not mistaken, there should be ROI and IRR calculation based on if, for example, you want to incorporate green renewable energy in your building. If I'm not mistaken, there's a subchapter down the road. And therefore, again, when it comes to investment that is more than, let's say, for example, 500,000, you would typically see your evaluation to extended lah for a longer period. Can be 5 years, can be 10 years, but would be typically around that area lah. Shouldn't be in 1 or 2 years. For detail audit and what do you call that? The measure monitoring and verification, it will go 1 or 2 or maybe a few months, 6 months or quarterly punya auditing, quarterly punya reporting. But for investment grade audit, typically it will be more than 5 years lah. So execution steps. Okay, I have to double check because if I'm not mistaken, okay, because I have to match with the other class punya progress by Encik Azri, because if not, then nanti kita mismatch dalam class the next class. So yeah, I think we can have ample time lah to meet that progress. So how do you do preliminary audit? This is how to do it. And this is for detailed energy audit. So there is a difference. So again, you need to have to clearly define the goal, which is to identify energy saving opportunities in general only. Don't have to be too critical. And if possible, where applicable, focus on no and low cost measures only. Meaning, if you want to save energy, focus something like maybe scheduling. Instead of operating your machine in 24 hours, maybe in during the whole business hours, maybe try to do in scheduling, meaning during what do you call that? Peak hours, try to only turn 2 machine on, and after business hours, then maybe in the other two, or maybe in a period of 1 or 2 hours, one machine, and then the next machine turn on, and the next machine turn on, as long as it doesn't affect the customers punya production. So only on no and low cost for preliminary, and then identify and maintenance and operational energy conservation opportunities. Again, the keyword here is conservation, not so much on efficiency. Again, remember what's the difference between energy conservation and energy efficiency. Energy conservation meaning turn it off. Energy efficient meaning it still turned on, it's still working as per previously, except maybe this time around we reduce the load, or maybe using kind of again scheduling lah. One thing that comes to mind is scheduling. And then identify needs for detailed analysis. So maybe at the moment the company just want to know where they are right now. So during this preliminary energy audit, what you can do is identify, okay, I may need to, in maybe once you have the funding, maybe in 5 years, or sorry, 5 months down the road, we need to look more detail into this area, for example, because maybe at the time you don't have, the company don't have the funding to buy data logger, for example. Data logger is actually, there are data logger that is DIY, meaning you can use Arduino. For those who knows, Arduino is just a microchip or hobbyist kit that you can do, that you can build as a data logger. But of course, the development time, the cost of upah orang nak buat data logger tu will be although significantly cheap than if you buy from off the shelf punya data logger, but you'll still need some time lah. So that are the one that what it means here, meaning during preliminary auditing tu, you pergi that area and you found out that that area, okay, tak ada data logger. So that means you can't quantify the amount of energy that particular area is being used. So you need to have that data logger, or maybe at a point that maybe you can, ya takkanlah you nak letak mati. Saya lupa. I'm not talking to electrical engineer. I'm talking about business to business students. So basically, you need to have a numbers lah for that area. You can't exactly stay there for maybe a certain period of time. Sebulan nak duduk dekat area tu, pergi pegang electrical energy dengan multimeter tu, yang tekan je to give you reading and record. Macam takkanlah tak pergi makan apa semua kan. So itulah gunanya data logger tu. So data logger tu basically it will tap the electrical energy being used for that particular area for a certain period of time that you define, and then you'll be able to get the data. Data ni maksudnya numbers, the numbers that you need to quantify the savings later on. Okay, and then duration, typically for preliminary, the longest people will do for auditing preliminary is only 1 month. So for maybe preliminary ni, that company just interested in getting to know this equipment only, just one equipment only, and typically you will be able to see it in 1 month or 1 week punya duration to apa ni oversee to accumulate the data. That will be sufficient. This is for preliminary. And how to do it is by data collection and site preparation. Data collection, you can again for energy management, you have to have data logger. So that's why, because data collection can only be collected once you have a data logger, or at least some equipment that is able to measure electrical energy being used by that area. And then you have to do plan of facility visit. Ni tak boleh elak. Any kind of audit, you have to be there in front to see that there are no numbers being manipulated. And then after that, once you have visited, only then you'll be able to come up with the audit report. So during this is before, this is during physical site visit, and this is after. So before, you have to make sure that you have ticked all the checklists from the website Serohan Jaya Tenaga. You can get it from there if you don't have the experience. And then you have to come up with the pre-analysis of energy being used based on previous year's track record, and then compare with the best practice benchmarks, so that by the time you come to the site here, you have already know which area that you need to target in order for you to clarify, to get a better picture, to get the best picture for that company by visiting. So doing the homework will be able for you to get a more detailed picture during the site visit. So during site visit, first, before you go into the plant itself, make sure to conduct a kick-off meeting. Kick-off meeting ni, for those who aren't familiar, I'm not sure business student macam mana, tapi kick-off meeting ni typically at the start of the day lah. When I was working back then in Sanabi Engineering, almost every single week at start of the week, Monday lah typically. Back then Johor Monday. Monday, still Monday. Johor supposedly konon-konon macam Terengganu a few years back, but when I was working there in Pasir Gudang, I would have the kick-off meeting typically on Monday morning at 8 o'clock. Depending on department lah. Typically, my department will be doing the kick-off meeting in the department itself, but depends on the company. So kick-off meeting typically at the start of the work, and then once kick-off meeting approval, everything has been cleared, then only will you be able to physically inspect the building or the equipment, and then discuss on the finding, whether maybe you have some clarification that you want the client to clarify, so that you won't be painting the bad picture of the company, or maybe you don't understand the machine, so you have to discuss on that finding to the end user. And finally, report. You have to do analysis. This is on your own. You don't have to involve the client at this stage. And description of saving measures, you have to put this in your report. And finally, submit the proposal to the respective person. Typically, between preparation, site visit, and report, all of this, site visit lah, typically not preparation and report, just the site visit. At the longest will be 2 days. I haven't heard from Dr. Nabil that whether he has done more than 2 days, but it could be possible given that now we are under strict SOP observance. So it could be one or more than 2 days. So regardless, it would not be more than a few weeks lah. Typically, site visit audit, because you have to remember the client typically would also need to fork out their money for you to audit. For example, if you're external auditor, for you to do the audit. So they don't want you to stay and pay you extensive amount. And then detailed energy audit is a bit different because now it's thorough. I'm unsure how to pronounce this, thorough, or I haven't practiced pronouncing this quite a lot. So I guess thorough and evaluation of energy procurement, conversion, and distribution and use, basically to get the figures of actual costs for that particular moment punya operation. And where preliminary is 1 week or 1 month, for detailed energy audit, typically will be done in 1 month for small and medium, and for large industrial, for example, steel manufacturing tadi tu, 3 months or more. It depends on what the client, how detailed the client wants to do it. Again, it depends on their money not spent to you as a external auditor. If you're internal, ada orang boleh argue lah, valid ke data ni. For external, typically people percaya sikit. Okay, so what are the steps? You have to gather the data, you have to evaluate the data, you have to analyze, and then finally consider, and before you come up with a proposal, make sure to consider all aspects of the organization, meaning jangan awak propose save uh, 50% of the energy being consumed, tapi awak propose dekat department HR. Dia orang nak buat macam mana? Takkan tutup lampu, buka lampu, dah boleh save your electricity bill 50%, which is tak logik lah. So make sure you have to consider organizational aspects and then implement the action plan. And to do these steps, preparation lah, which is plan, collect, carry out, calculate, and basically calculate lah, because when you're providing detailed analysis, nak tak nak, kena calculate. Okay, and yang lain-lain tu boleh have a look lah, tapi not so critical so much that I need to elaborate in detail. Okay, so let's say lah you're the owner of the company and you don't know which one do you want to use, given that you have a limited amount of funding or maybe whatever constraints that you guys might have lah. So the first being the question that you need to answer yourself: do you want to evaluate the overall? If just specific, or maybe overall opportunity potential. If you just want the general, then preliminary. If you want exact figures, because now you want to implement energy management, so what you need to do is detailed energy audit. Okay, if have you had energy audit being done previously? If yes, you need to update only latest data, so may not require detailed energy audit, depends. Sebab bukan nak find out which area lagi dah. Now you dah tahu that area, it's just that you need to update. So might not even have to do some auditing pun. Just ask somebody in your company to get this data, if you have the data logger, lagi senang lah. Just silap-silap ambil daripada your PC connected to your company punya network pun dah cukup. Tak perlu pergi site visit lah. But if no data logger has been installed and maybe tak pernah buat energy audit, then first it is suggested that you might want to do walk through or preliminary lah. Okay, have energy efficiency project have been installed previously? If yes, then just perform MNV. Don't need any kind of auditing, because MNV you'll be able to get the figures the same. ECM is energy what do you call it? Energy cost, M measures, energy conservation measures. Sorry, saya duk fikir benda lain. Energy conservation measures. So not energy efficiency measures, meaning energy conservation. You know that you can only achieve efficiency after this is only by turning on and turning off. So that falls under ECM, energy conservation measures. But if there are none, energy project being done, energy efficiency project, so you might want to kickstart the program. So you need to have some preliminary energy audit. Again, depending on your budget. If you don't have limited funds, macam ni dia tanya, do you have limited funds? Then preliminary. But if you don't have any limitation on the fund that you want to spend on an audit, then only then you'll be advised to buat detailed energy audits. But remember, it will take 2 or 3 months energy audit. So imagine the amount of payment that you have to make to the auditor, external especially, which will prove quite significant, right? So all the other detail ni boleh tengok sini, saya ada apa elaborate banyak dah, but I think it's clear lah on the continuing the other questions here. So what are the resources? When you're talking about resources, you're not talking about money and cents only. You're also talking about all the living things and also the non-living things that you need to have to be able to perform proper energy audit to your company, to the company. Instrument in order for you to do first auditors lah. Any kind of audit need to have auditors, and in order for the auditors to perform their task, they need to have equipment or instruments, typically data logger, multimeter, connectivity test or whatever. That will be, if you hire external person, chances are they already have the equipment with them, so you don't need to spend money on that. And then you have to have the energy record as a result of the implementation of the instrument. So typically it will be in forms of charts. Myself, when I conduct my research in mobile robots, all the data will be typically in .csv, comma separated values. So when I export it to Excel, all the commas will be converted into tables yang proper, yang cantik lah. So penting, sebab kalau your energy records tu jenis yang apa susun apa tak ada labeling yang bersepah-sepah, susah nak faham, or NA not available, that will be an issue. So energy records kena ada. Kalau tak perlu apa, at least, at the very least, kalau energy records tak ada, make sure apa auditor tu boleh dapatkan data tu easily from your track record. So having instrument punya data ni, takkan awak nak every single time nak tulis atas pen and papers kan. So nak tak nak kena ada computers and all the software tools required. Typically software tools ni auditor pakai pun most probably Excel, or maybe they have their own special equipment software. I'm not quite sure there, but when I did my case studies, when I obtained my REEMs, is basically it's just Excel. Budget and time, of course, you have to pay the auditors for them to eat and sleep, or not eat and sleep, eat and do their work at your premise, and then some allocation of time for them to do the work. So this is basically how energy audit team can be constructed. First, you have to have the process expertise themselves, because if the person don't know how to properly shut down, turn on a machine, then your audit may have big difficulty lah nak realize, sebab tak tahu macam mana nak tutup sekejap, nak collect data kan, problem lah. And this can be in the sense of energy manager, chief engineer, all the technical person involved can fall under process expertise. And then the audit process expertise themselves, which can be from the which also can be other departments lah. May not just be the engineer, can also be the accounting, HR, whatever, but as long as they know how to do the audit properly. And typically it is advised that the lead auditor to be from the management level, can also be technical, but it is advised from management because they have the authority nak memudahkan kerja nak buat audit tu, nak suruh orang senang sikit. And auditor for mechanical and thermal, electrical and computer person ni more on the technical side lah, to make sure that the audit process, audit work is not interrupted by some technical things when they need to do it. And finally, both this audit expertise and process expertise need to have support and coordination from the top management and as well as the service company. Energy service company. Is this the ESC? Hold on, yeah. The one that I'm confusing just a bit just now. Is it SEC? Oh, lain-lain. So energy service company ni is the Malakoff, not TNB specifically. Sorry, all the renewable energy punya company or maybe this energy supplier lah. Macam I would expect steel company have their own specific energy provider, meaning they may not generate their own, but for example, Malakoff can supply to them directly. Of course, by agreement from TNB, but you have to have their support also because for you to tap you need for you to tap a building typically the whole building punya electrical energy consumption you might want to tap it at the TNB electrical punya meter tu or the supplier electrical energy punya meter tu. So you can't simply buka kotak tu cucuk your wires and then call it a day. No, boleh kena saman tu sebab itu melibatkan safety. So you have to get the approval also for you to tap and to conduct your auditing process. Okay. Typically, they won't have any issues with you, but you have to get the approval so that if let's say you don't have judgment or in your team, at least they can provide it to you. Okay. Energy manager role during auditing process, there are three: pre, during, and post. Post is selepas post grad and tapi tak panggil pre grad lah. I'm not sure why. So pre-audit, before you do the auditing process, make sure kalau boleh jangan masuk dulu. Collect data remotely dulu if possible. If applicable, try to get your data from the desktop. Desktop ni can be computer, can be filing cabinet or whatever, but make sure collect data dulu untuk give you the big picture how audit can be done. Maybe or visit this dulu, this unit dulu ke, this unit dulu ke. And then arrange for key decision makers to be key decision makers ni maksudnya boss lah. Boss kena attend the meeting with the energy auditor because let's say lah dia kata oh saya busy tak boleh join. Then any kind of approval still need to go through them so that there's no hassle down the road nanti. Katakanlah you and the engineer agree nak kena pasang solar panel. Dah approve sampai stage submit tu boss tiba-tiba dia kata tak ada duit. Sia-sia your effort for the rest of the year ke apa ke, rugilah. So make sure they know and can give input especially during kick-off meeting lah. So make sure they are available during the time that you want to come and to do your audit. Typically they wouldn't have issues lah sebab nak masuk company diorang kan. They would be there to greet you. And then identify scopes and objectives that you want to cover for your audit process. Identify energy efficiency project that can be put into the pipeline or future proposal. Provide relevant form to meet the primary requirements, safety, and the so typically you need before you come in any site, you will need to have the OSHA punya fill out form tu and then permit to work. And only then, I'm talking about oil processing facilities. Waktu saya lepas saya kerja Sandarbi tu, I had to work with one of the sub vendors. I have been working in PPM Melaka, Petronas Penapisan Petronas Melaka. So I would spend just to install CCTV. I need to come over there almost 1 week before every single day. Attend the toolbox meeting, attend the safety briefing, and then apply the permit to work. And only then will I be able to masuk site dia. So ni lah relevant form ni penting. It will consume a chunk of your audit time sebenarnya. Relevant form sebab dia orang nak kena observe safety. Kalau meletup orang tak pasal dia. So during audit process, you need to the first time you're coming in, make sure to attend kickoff meeting. If they don't do it, make sure you yourself provide a kickoff meeting with the key person, top management. Key person ni maksudnya person yang boleh bagi access you to the machine, or the person who is involved for that particular area. Because yelah, nak buka kunci ke apa kan, for example. And then fulfill safety requirement. Basically, kalau masuk any kind of processing plant, you'll need to wear the PPE, protective gear. And then fill up the permit to work forms. Prepare equipment standards and specification. Make sure, because if you want to interrupt, make sure you know just a little bit pun tak apa, tapi still you have to read on how to operate the equipment in case you want to interface with the equipment, so that you wouldn't do silly mistakes. Ensure equipment reliability. So reliability meanings, let's say lah, you take the data at 2 o'clock and then you turn it off, and after you did your audit, you turn it on, and suddenly the data shows a different value instead of the normal operating one. So that means your data isn't reliable. So that's why you need to have a technical punya person in your auditing team to make sure that those data that you spend the day collecting is actually viable, bukan benda merepek. Okay. And then during audit tu, make sure you review audit progress, where you are right now. Make sure tak ada benda tertinggal dalam checklist you, so that nanti tak adalah leceh nak masuk balik. And then after that, make sure data being collected, and at the very least pre-analysis. Make sure tak ada pre-analysis ni, maksudnya bukan you tiba-tiba keluar all the equation semua tu, tak. Make sure data tu, typically when you're talking about interaction with machines, logically semua data akan collect tau. Tapi there are, based on my own experience, there are circumstances where you'll see a lot of NA not available. Maksudnya Excel tu, maybe temperature sepatutnya 10, 10, 10, 11, 11, 11, 12, 12 once you turn on the heat. But actually it is heating, but the data doesn't transmit it to your data logger or your Excel file tu lah, because apparently there's a mismatch in timing, data being sent and data being produced. So that one you have to refer to the technical team lah, to make sure that the data that you have spent the whole month collecting tak membazir. Yelah, you collect data on the side, and then you forgot to do a preliminary analysis. And then after a few months collecting, you thought everything is okay, and once you got back to your place to do the proper analysis, and then you found out that all the data is actually NA. Rupa-rupanya lupa cocok USB data logger tu dalam your PC. Habislah. Nak cakap apa, you dah buang masa semua orang lah. Memang kena marah lah. So that's why try when your data collection, when you're done with data collection, make sure at the very least tengok data tu in roughly dia sebenarnya during audit ni, not so much on critical sangat, tapi make sure data semua valid lah, so that tak buang masa orang. And then review the draft and of the energy audit and final report. During audit phase, I would say review to the best that you could lah, not so much on a critical part, but make sure the draft to reflects betul all the audit process that you've done. And once you have done the audit phase, again, you still can collect the data to complement the data that you have collected, especially in historical terms, and finally report all the findings that you have found and your audit report to the top management. And finally, if possible, propose and prioritize energy saving measures to be in line with the company target and plan. I mean, there's no point of you proposing, because katalah you dah buat audit and you found out that there's only limited ways that you can gain more energy efficiency after you have done the audit, and so you feel inclined to propose installation of renewable energy for that company. Tapi company tu memang kata saya tak nak They don't want to spend $500,000 installing solar panel for their buildings because they actually have some limitation apa-apa lah. So bazir lah kertas awak mengayat apa semua sebab memang company tak nak move on to existing punya progress. So make sure jangan buang masa lah. Make sure you double check their target and plan and then propose accordingly to their needs. Okay, so energy auditor tadi, energy manager punya role. Now we look into the duties of an energy auditor, which is specifically during the energy audit. First, you have to plan anything that you want to do in life. You have to plan. Nak kahwin pun kena plan. Nak bekerja pun, nak naik pangkat cepat kena ada plan. Now, whatever that you want to do, business ke apa ke, still you have to plan and then carry out the plan if possible to the best of your ability. So the same thing goes with energy auditor lah. Tak nak lah nanti dah dekat site, tak tahu dah nak measure apa. Ikutlah kau. Tak boleh lah. Buang masa orang je. Okay, and then quantify energy consumption and make sure to establish the baseline. Again, baseline kita akan explore in a bit, in a few subchapters after this. And then construct energy and material balance. When you call balance, it doesn't mean you have to pegang meter TNB tu dengan your machine tu. Tak, bukan. Maksudnya, kalau boleh match electrical. Sebab when you supply energy to a machine, typically there will be some losses over there, either due to inefficiency of operating or even the machine itself memang ada masalah. So you have to find that balance or equation lah senang cerita, so that you can come up with the best solution to operate the machine efficiently. And then perform evaluation of energy and utility system, compare energy norms with existing energy consumption level. Ni energy norms ni, I think the best practice punya energy consumption lah, based on your previous case study or advised by, or maybe experience reported from other energy manager that uses the same machine, for example. So best practice punya compare dengan company tu punya energy consumption levels for that machine. So compare that so that you'll be able to properly advise your client that you should actually operate this according to this. And then identify and prioritize energy saving measures, ESM, self-explanatory. And then analysis of technical and financial feasibility of energy saving measures. Okay, this one is the most critical part that I would say your client will perk up, especially business owners, to realize your energy saving measures. So you need to analyze all the possible technical and financial feasibility. As an energy auditor, at that particular moment, waktu site visit tu, kalau boleh advise terus lah. Okay, let's say for example, based on your experience, interfacing with the same machine, let's say for example a boiler, you found out that other company has been able to get their energy consumption to maybe just 50% of the client that you have right now. So what they did is just instead of operating the boiler during maybe operating at 100 efficient 100% operating punya workload, they reduce it to maybe 80%. You still have the same product output, but now it's 80%, 20% less than operating at 100% without any product failure, without any issues with the end product yang company tu nak produce kan. So try to advise them to do this. And recommend energy efficient technologies and alternate energy sources depend on the company budget. If they are able to come up with a specific amount, then you can propose. And finally, report, present, and follow up to make sure that, biasalah manusia, kita present, especially when you're interfacing with big companies, they tend to look at energy saving measures ni, I would say the least concern lah. They are more interested in sales and whatnot, surviving. So make sure to follow up. Don't just submit the report and then biarkan je sampai bila-bila. Memang tak sia-sia lah buat kerja tu. Okay, we are almost at the end because the other class stopped at desktop data collection. So bear with me. Guess we'll just power through and then so that we'll finish this early. So these are the methods and approach in energy auditing. First, at the start, you have to have kickoff meeting. Second, desktop data collection. Then final, and then once you have done that, will you be able to do the site investigation to collect the data, field data, then analysis, and analyze and find any kind of, process the data lah basically, and then do the report, and finally present. And of course, submission of final report. Once you got the comment from the client. So this is basically the flow chart of energy auditing. So first we look at kickoff meeting because if you look here, kickoff meeting, you have to have audit team, you have to have plan schedule, and clearly define your work scope so that nobody has miscommunication on the objective that you want to achieve by this audit. Okay, we look into kickoff meeting. So for kickoff meeting, what you should put into the agenda of the kickoff meeting is first define the objective of your energy audit. What do you want to do? What do you are trying to achieve? What at the end of the audit, what do you expect that you'll be able to present? And then clearly define the scope and boundary, meaning if the company just want you to focus on just one machine, janganlah mengada-ngada pergi ada department pergi propose department tukar ni tukar tu pula, buang masa, buang duit, and then most probably klien pun bengang tengok awak. So make sure clearly define so that there's no miscommunication between you and your client, the boundary and the scope, because again safety juga, salah masuk plan meletup. And then make sure to construct a team that involve auditor and also the facility personnel so that all the requirement and aspect punya operation tu being observed and can be advised during the site visit. Timeline of the audit process so that not overshooting or maybe causing delay in getting the report. What kind of deliverable that should be obtained, deliverable at the end of the audit, what do you need, who do you need to report to, who you can discuss to, any kind of equipment that you might want to bring. So deliverables semua discuss kat sini lah. And format report, I'm not sure whether private company has specific report format that you need to observe, but government typically memang red tape ni diorang punya ngah lah, menyampah lah. Okay, and then requirement for safety and document confidentiality, whether the company have any confidentiality that you need to observe so that it won't leak to their competitors. Who contact person should be moving forward once you have completed the report, and finally explain to them, to the to the client, what do you plan the action is during the audit. Maybe you want to go to this site first. Maybe you want to measure the dimension first before you're able to come up with a proposal. Maybe you want to go to the top building first instead of the ground level because you believe that the chiller of the air condition is uh, on typically it will be on top of the building so you want to go to the top of the building first instead of the first floor, second floor, third floor from there. So make sure you explain your audit working process to the facility so that they can assist you better. Okay, so these are the purpose of kickoff meeting. This is, I guess, this is from the experience of Dr. Nabil himself because this is quite specific, where he told where he writes here that you need to brief the client, make sure that the auditing team also include the client side. So again, any kind of document needed, any kind of manual, operating manual, record drawings to make sure that before entering the data at the site visit, the site, the basic data has been collected, for example, to help with the audit process. Any kind of permission that may be needed to access the facilities, safety procedures typically being implemented, and then the auditing process themselves, make sure everyone in agreement and therefore can coordinate the auditing activities efficiently. Office area if needed, typically I wouldn't say, depends lah. Kalau maybe you're an external auditor, for example, then yeah, office area is applicable. That maybe kawasan tu jauh sangat ke, so might need to have a specific office area to go through the data filing, data collection and whatnot. And time schedule, because this one is really important, because especially if you're involved with if your client is the processing punya client, time schedule ni memang penting sebab sometimes they need to do maintenance on their process, and tiba-tiba time tu lah you nak datang nak audit, memanglah energy consumption dia kosong sebab dia turn off, everything shut down, so no point lah you datang at that time. So make sure time schedule tu tak conflict with the clients punya production time ke whatever. So make sure you have agreed upon time with the client, and then make sure you brief the client on what kind of what inspect client's facilities to basically our kickoff meeting. Before you get into the plan in detail, you can request for the client to allow you to go into the facilities yourself, just to briefly see maybe the equipment you need to focus more on in what area, or maybe that area maybe you want to focus more on this section only. You don't have to go through the whole building, you just need maybe just the boiler area, or maybe the HVAC area, so not to focus on the lighting so much. So this could give you a better picture if you do some preliminary inspection at the client facility, of course depending on the approval. Okay. Okay, so for desktop data collection, I'll stop here because we need to sync with the other class so that they are not a bit of a loss, because we still have a half an hour, but yeah, we need to match with their progress, so as in the next class will be on the same page. Okay, any questions so far that you might have that you want me to clarify? No, everything's clear. Okay, so if there are no questions,